Hello everyone and welcome back. Exams are just around the corner. I know, the tension is building up. But hey, tension mat lo. We're going to quickly revise this super important chapter on social institutions, and I promise, by the end of this, you'll be all set to score top marks.
You see, social institutions isn't just some boring textbook concept. No way. It's all around us. You see it in your own family, in your neighborhood, and even when you're scrolling through your phone. These big ideas, caste, tribe, and family, they literally shape our world every single day.
So here's our game plan to make this chapter feel super easy. We'll go through each of these topics one by one. It's a clear roadmap that's going to help you remember all the key points for your exam. Ready? Cello, let's begin.
So, first things first, what are social institutions anyway? Well, think of them like the rules of a game. Society isn't just a bunch of people running around. It has a structure, right? And things like caste, tribe, and family are the established systems and rules that give our society that very structure. Simple. Okay, now let's dive into the first big one. And yeah, it can be a little complex, the caste system. But don't you worry, not one bit. We're going to break it down into really clear, simple parts. Together, we've got this. To really get a grip on caste, you have to know the difference between two words, Varna and Jati. Now, Varna is the big four-part idea you read about in the old books. But Jati is the reality on the ground. It's the thousands of local communities that people actually belong to. Getting this difference is absolutely key.
For your exams, bacho, these 6 points are pure gold. You have to remember them. The traditional caste system was incredibly strict. Your status came from your birth, who you could marry was decided for you, and even your job was fixed. And all of this was built on ideas of purity and pollution.
But here's a question. Did everyone just accept this system quietly? Absolutely not. Throughout our history, some amazing people, true heroes, fought against this injustice. Leaders like Jyotirao Phule, for example, stood up and challenged these unfair rules head-on. And it's so important to know these names. These reformers were true trailblazers, men and women from all backgrounds who worked so hard to make our society more equal. Their stories are a really vital part of our history. Now let's see what happened when the British came to India. Their arrival completely changed the game for the caste system. It really was a whole new chapter. You see, to rule India, the British started counting everyone and everything, including caste, in their census. Now, they didn't mean to, but this had a huge side effect. It kind of froze these caste identities, making them much more rigid and official than before. And this is when legal terms like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes were born. Okay, here's another star-marked concept for your exam: Sanskritization. It's a term from the great sociologist M.N. Srinivas. It basically describes how some lower caste groups tried to, climb the social ladder by adopting the customs and practices of the upper castes. This brings us to a really interesting point about caste in India today. For many people in big cities, especially from upper castes, caste can feel, well, invisible. But for people from scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other marginalized groups, caste is still very, very visible. It's a huge part of their identity, connected to both disadvantage and political action. All right, let's switch gears. Now we're going to turn our attention to another very, very important community in India, the Adivasis, who we often call tribal communities. So where do India's tribal communities live? This chart makes it super clear, right? The vast majority, a whopping 85%, are concentrated in what we call Middle India. That's the big belt stretching all the way from Gujarat to West Bengal. The heart of our country is their home. Now, this slide tells a very important and, honestly, a pretty sad story. All this national development, big dams, mines, factories, has often come at a huge, huge cost to Adivasi communities. They've often been the ones who had to move, losing their homes, their forests, and their way of life, all in the name of progress. But, and this is so important to remember, tribal communities are not silent victims. Not at all. A new, educated middle class is rising, and they are proudly asserting their Adivasi identity. They are fighting for their rights, their culture, their land. And this has led to powerful movements and even the creation of new states like Jharkhand. All right, on to our final topic, and it's one we all know very well: family. But for our exam, let's put on our special sociologist classes and look at it a bit differently. This part is pretty straightforward. You have the nuclear family, that's just one set of parents and their kids. And then you have the extended family, which we in India often call the joint family, where you have multiple generations all living together. It's often seen as the typical Indian family, but remember, there's a huge variety across our country. Okay, pop quiz time. This is a classic trick question on exams, so listen carefully. Is matrilineal the same thing as matriarchy? What do you think? And the answer is a big no. They are not the same at all. Matrilineal is all about inheritance, property passing from mother to daughter. That's it. Matriarchy, on the other hand, would be a society where women hold all the power. And you know what? There's no real evidence that a society like that has ever truly existed. This is a very important difference to remember. Okay, we've covered all the main ideas, so to finish up, let's tackle a sample question, exactly like one you might see on your exam paper. You ready for this? Here's the question. How would you argue against the idea that tribal communities are primitive or isolated? Just take a second to think. What did we just talk about? Remember their history, their kingdoms, their contact with the outside world?
And here is how you would write a perfect full marks answer. First, you talk about their powerful kingdoms in history, like the Gonds. Then you'd mention their trade links and that they practice settled farming. And finally, you'd explain how colonialism forced them into even more contact with the mainstream. See? These points clearly prove they were never truly isolated.
And that's a wrap. You've all done a fantastic job today. Seriously, before you go, here's one last thing to think about. In our world of Instagram, AI, and everything being so connected, how do you think these ancient things, caste, tribe, family, are going to change? It's a fascinating question for your generation. That's all for now. Best of luck for your exams. You're going to do great.